Hello everyone, and welcome to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else that I kind of want to mention. And right at the top here, I do want to say, with the ongoing issues in Ukraine with Russia, that myself and my podcast stand with the Ukrainian people. I wish there was more I could do, but I've already diverted funds to help them, and that's honestly the best I can do. But for the most part, this is a Magic the Gathering podcast where I just kind of get to talk about things that interest me or things that I'm not happy about, stuff like that. And to really bring it back into Magic, I do want to say we had our first stream back, a week ago. And the stream went well. The end, the OBS did crash, and we ended up playing out the rest of Game 2 without the stream. And when I went to edit the gameplay video, part of the audio file was corrupted and non-recoverable, so those games are lost to history because I could not recover them, which makes me kind of sad. That said, we will be streaming again this Friday, March 4th, because it was pointed out to me that in my last episode I made a mistake and said May 4th, and I apologize for that. We will be joined by Anna MT and Oni MTG. Anna has her own stream, and I was featured on that several weeks ago. Great person, really fun to play with. And then Oni is actually part of the Mana Rock podcast. We unfortunately couldn't get Lane as well because he's going to be busy that day. So I reached out to somebody else, and they agreed. I really hope to have a couple of fun games with them, and yeah, I'm actually going to talk about one of the decks I'm hoping to play in the second half of this, because I did something stupid and crazy again. And by that I mean a companion that I will get into further detail in the next half of this. So that said, I'll see you in a second. Hey, I just want to take a minute to tell you about my Patreon. I know times are hard for everybody, and I know it isn't easy to shuffle around bills and stuff, believe me, I know that. But if you would like to help support the podcast and me, you can find the links to my Patreon in my link tree, which is always put into the description of either the video or the audio, wherever you're listening to it. It would really mean the world to me. Honestly, I'm just struggling to make ends meet most weeks. But that's it. That's all. If you want to help, the links will be where you can find them. And welcome back. Now, the commander for the deck that I'm going to talk about is somebody that I've been fiddling around with an idea for a while. It is Killian Ink Duelist, a white and a black for a 2/2 with lifelink, menace, and spells that you cast that target a creature cost 2 less. Now, that's not creatures you control, but creatures in general. But I wanted to do something, again, a little crazy. So I partnered it, and by that I mean I have a companion, Luris of the Dream Den. 1 and then 2 hybrid white-black for a 3/2 Cat Nightmare. It has companion, and the companion cost is that each permanent card in your starting deck has converted mana cost 2 or less. So, 2 or less on all of our permanents. That's the restriction I'm playing with. And I kind of wanted to do a Soul Sisters-esque type of deck. But Soul Sisters themselves don't win, so my sub-theme in the deck is going to be a little Voltron-y. So I guess since I wanted to start with it being a Soul Sisters deck, let's talk about some Soul Sisters. Namely, the deck type got its name from Soul Warden and Soul's Attendant. Soul Warden is a single white mana for a 1/1 human cleric, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. And then Soul's Attendant is a single white mana for a 1/1 human cleric, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may gain 1 life. So the only reasonable difference between the two of them is that one is not a May and one is a May. Although most times you're just going to want to gain the life. But moving on, we have Daxos, Blessed by the Sun. He is white for a 2-star demigod. His toughness is equal to your devotion to white, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield or dies, you gain 1 life. But he specifically only cares about creatures entering that we control or leaving. And then we have what most people consider the meanest of the Soul Sisters, which is Suture Priest. 1 and a white for a 1/1 cleric, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain 1 life, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may have that player lose 1 life. Yeah, so that's kind of the core of the deck, is cheap creatures that are going to gain us life or drain opponents. Things like Corpse Knight, which is a white and a black for a 2/2 zombie knight. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Or Blood Artist is 1 and a white for a 0/1 vampire, but whenever it or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So there is that life gain and drain kind of sub-theme here. But we also kind of wanted to have ways to win. Namely, things like Core Spirit Dancer. 1 and a white for a 0/2 core wizard. Core Spirit Dancer gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it, and whenever you cast an aura spell, you may draw a card. Similar to her is SRAM Senior Artificer. 1 and a white for a 2/2 Dwarf Advisor. Whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. Now, when I was slowly building this and I kind of packed it with like a bunch of enchantments and stuff, I kind of realized I don't really have a way to protect any of my stuff. So I kind of deviated a little bit to find a few other things that would fit into our categories. Things like 8.5 Tails, which is a 2 white for 2/2 Fox Cleric. It has 1 and a white, and target permanent you control gains protection from white till end of turn, and you can pay 1 to make target spell or permanent white until end of turn. The one downside to this is if you give something protection from white and it has a white enchantment on it, the enchantment will fall off. But sometimes that's better to give something the protection, just because if you do end up throwing something into the bin, you can just recast it with Luris at a later date. Yeah. Flicker Form is 1 and a white for an aura you enchant a creature, and then you can pay 2 white to exile the creature and aura, all auras attached to it, and then at the beginning of the next end step you return the card to the battlefield under its owner's control. And then if you do, you return other cards exiled this way to the battlefield under their owner's control attached to that creature. Because auras are weird with timing, there has to be the creature there first so that they can attach to it. Malakir Rebirth, I put in here as a way to protect creatures. It also doubles as the land, but 1 black for an instant. Choose a creature, you'll lose 2 life until end of turn that creature gains. When this creature dies, return to the battlefield under its owner's control. Or you can play the reverse side, which is Malakir Mire. It enters tapped, and it taps for a black. Now, I went in a slightly odd direction when you think about protection with the next couple of cards. The first one being Authority of the Consuls. Single white for an enchantment. Creatures your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. So how I justify this as a protection spell is if creatures are entering the battlefield tapped, that means they're not going to be able to block the turn they come in. And that's kind of the same behind Blind Obedience, which is 1 and a white for an enchantment with Extort. And artifact and creatures your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. And I get that people would consider those stacks pieces, but in here I'm considering them more of a removal for a turn. Although Blind Obedience can win the game with Extort because, well, mostly because we're going to be able to cast 2 to 3 things a turn most times and have extra mana up just because the mana curve of our deck is so low. Yeah. I do want to talk about a little reanimation. Mainly because it gets into one of the few places where we can have spells that cost more than 2. And also, people are going to want to kill Lurrus, and we're going to want to have ways to reanimate him. Unfortunately, exile is still a thing, and not exactly a ton of ways to deal with that. But we're going to start with the OG Reanimate. Single black for a sorcery, put a creature card from a graveyard into play under your control. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Call of the Death Dweller is 2 and a black for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards with total converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a Death Touch counter on either of them, then put a Menace counter on either of them. So, again, if we get Lurrus back with Call of the Death Dweller, he becomes a 3-2 with lifelink, Death Touch, and Menace. Victimize is 2 and a black for a sorcery. Choose 2 creature cards in your graveyard. Sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. Rise to Glory is 3, a white, and a black for a sorcery. You can choose 1 or both. To return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and or return target aura card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This just really fit with the deck because we are running a lot of auras that we're going to want to get back repeatedly. And then Obsidat's Aid is 3 white black for a sorcery to return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Mainly I'm running this because I didn't have anywhere else I wanted to run it. I did think about putting this one in Niv Mizzet and Gigantha, except I already have a lot of Orzhov cards in there, and I didn't really want to cut any of them. So it ended up here. Yeah. Then kind of the last bit I want to get into mainly is how we're planning on winning the game. And if you haven't guessed already, it's going to be by making either Lurrus or Killian quite swole and then Beating Face. So first up, we have Blade of the Oni. 1 and a black for an equipment demon. Yes, the weird things from Kamigawa. So it is a 3/1 with Menace. And the equipped creature has base power and toughness 5/5, Menace, and is a black demon in addition to its other colors and types. And it has Reconfigure for 2 black. Now, Reconfigure is similar to Equip. The only difference is you cannot pay an equip cost to unequip something, but you can pay a Reconfigure cost to reconfigure off of a creature as well as onto a creature. Just a little tidbit of information there. But moving on, we have Daybreak Coronet. 2 white mana for an aura. You can only enchant a creature with another aura attached to it, but the enchanted creature gets +3/+3 first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. Skyblade's Boon is 1 and a white for an aura. Enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 in flying, but you can also pay 2 and a white to return Skyblade's Boon to its owner's hand. You can activate only if it is on the battlefield or in your graveyard, so it's another form of recursion for an enchantment, basically. Angelic Gift is 1 and a white. Enchanted creature. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and the enchanted creature has flying. Ethereal Armor is a single white for an aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. Spirit Mantle is 1 and a white for an aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and protection from creatures. And then the probably one of the best finishers I'm going to have in the deck is All That Glitters. 1 and a white for an aura with enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So, play it on one of the boys and give them like +10/+10 and go to town. But that's basically a quick rundown of the deck. The deck is in my Architect if you follow that link in my link tree, and you can check it out. And yeah, I think that's gonna do it. Thanks for sticking around, and I guess I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.